Story number 1. I moved to Oklahoma back in 2012 to start a secret gardening business. I bought a house and lived in a rural area. I knew the nearby area well, but I didn't wander too far, since Oklahoma is a largely rural state. After about a year of living there, I resumed one of my favorite hobbies, hunting. White-tailed deer hunting is probably the most popular in Oklahoma, but due to my unfamiliarity with the area and the state, I wasn't having any luck when I went hunting. One day, I went hunting for whitetail and didn't have any luck. I got back into my truck and started driving back on the dirt roads through the woods when I saw a white-tailed deer from afar. On the left side, between some trees, was an old gray Silverado truck parked there, but I didn't see anyone inside. I parked my car on the right side, off the road, and got out with my hunting rifle. I never took my eyes off the deer, and I could see it walking away into the thickness of the forest. I tried to quietly follow the deer, but I couldn't tell exactly where it went. Maybe it was just behind some bushes. I continued to follow the deer and track where it was going. When I first saw the deer, it wasn't even that far away. Therefore, all I could think about was tracking it, shooting it, and taking the meat home with me. To make a long story short, I was tracking this deer for almost 2 hours into the forest. Every little clue that the deer was still around encouraged me to pursue it further. Then finally, I saw it. Not too far ahead of me was a white-tailed deer, the same one I had been tracking. I slowly got into position and took aim at it. However, the deer walked behind a big fallen tree and didn't come back out as I waited. I then slowly approached the big tree, keeping a distance from it. When I got to an area where I could see behind the fallen tree, there was no deer there. But I saw a man on the ground, as if he were sleeping. His face had this pale bluish look, and my heart sank. When I got closer to inspect the man, I realized that he was dead. He looked around 20 years old, but had probably been dead for a few days. I got out of there and power walked back to my car, which took me more than an hour. The old gray Silverado truck was probably his. I reported what I saw to the authorities. A few days later, I saw the story in the local newspaper. The young man was 24 years old, and it was his second year hunting. He had used his Samsung cell phone to record a few clips of him tracking a white-tailed deer that he saw on the side of the dirt road. Then he got lost. There was a clip of him saying that he felt like his blood sugar was low, and if he didn't find his way back to his truck, he would probably go to sleep and never wake up. Just reading his story sent chills all over me. He was probably chasing the same white-tailed deer that I was chasing. The question is, was that deer even real? Story number 2. It was bow hunting season. There's nothing more satisfying than shooting a deer with a bow. Those of you who love bow hunting know what I'm talking about. It feels so much better to kill a deer with a bow than with a rifle. I remember that day while I was out hunting. It started to snow a little. Winter was coming early that year for some reason. I don't know if we Hmong know how to look for deer tracks, or tell if the tracks or footprints are new or old. We were still new to America at the time. For me, I like it when I find deer footprints on a pile of rotted leaves rather than in mud. Footprints in mud can be there for a long time, and you don't know whether they're new or old. But the footprints on rotted leaves are usually new, because they don't remain there for long. I found myself tracking a deer after I found some fresh footprints on some old dead leaves. It didn't take long before I spotted the deer walking through the dried fallen leaves in the valley. I took careful aim and released the arrow. The deer took a step when it heard the release, and I missed the critical spot. The arrow hit the deer close to its hindquarters, and it took off running. I let it run while I slowly tried to track it. It probably wasn't going to die, but at some point, the deer would take a break, and that's when I would try to aim for a critical spot. I remember following the deer into an area with a lot of white trees. I could no longer track it and didn't see any more blood or tracks. Then I came across a strange wooden staircase that went up about 20 feet into the air. I figured I'd go up the stairs and see if I could spot the deer or find any clues as to where it might have gone. I climbed the stairs all the way up and looked around, but I didn't see anything besides white tree branches. For some strange reason, I felt like what I was doing had happened before, but I knew that was the first time I'd seen a random staircase in the woods. When I climbed back down, I saw tall grasses at the bottom of the stairs. Earlier there were no grasses, just short, dead yellow ones. Or maybe I just didn't remember or care to pay attention. I really felt as if I've done this before, or this had occurred to me before. It was just a moment of déjà vu, I guess. At the same time, I thought I might have stumbled onto private property because of the stairs. Maybe there used to be a house there, and they tore it down or something, I thought. I climbed down and wandered away from that area. Before sunset, I gave up trying to track the deer and went back to my little old pickup truck. As I drove home, I kept feeling like this had happened before. I felt so strange ever since I climbed that staircase in the forest. I don't even know why there was a staircase in the forest. It's just so random. I drove from the mountain all the way down until I reached a four-way stops. On my right, I saw a white Tacoma truck that was wrecked. It looked as if it had fallen off the road. It was all damaged and looked like it had just happened. Since no one was there and it was getting dark, I grabbed my little pistol, stopped my car, and got out to see if anyone needed help. I got to the white damaged truck, and no one was inside, but there was blood. The two front doors looked as though someone had cut them off and left them in the grass. It looked like they had been cut off with a chainsaw. Maybe the firemen had cut them off to get the person out. The rearview mirror had one of those religious little black statue things still hanging on a string. The car must have belonged to a Southeast Asian person. I got back to my car and drove home. The following year, my wife and I sold my old pickup truck and bought a new white Tacoma truck. I couldn't wait for hunting season to take my truck up into the mountains. I remembered my father telling me that he'd been having bad dreams and warned us not to go anywhere, especially not hunting that year. But I knew I couldn't do that. I'd been waiting for hunting season all year long. Plus, dreams are just dreams. By the way, the Hmong takes dreams as a warning sign. When deer season opened, I went with my friends in my new pickup truck. I was having a good time. These new Tacoma trucks can go uphill much better than the old ones. All four of us went that day. 3 of my friends each got their own deer. I was the only one without one. When I got home, I went to take a shower. When I came back out, my little daughter looked at me, started crying loudly, and ran to her mom, while covering her eyes. I followed her to her mother. Her mother asked what happened, and she just pointed a finger at me. I picked her up, but she looked at me, started crying, and kicking again. I said, "Baby, it's just me. It's just Daddy." My daughter continued to cover her eyes and cried loudly, so I handed her back to my wife. My wife said, "Look, baby, it's just your daddy." "Yeah, but Daddy's scary," my daughter said. My wife forced my daughter's hands away from her eyes and made her look at me again, and this time she stopped crying. Then I squatted down and opened my arms. My wife put my daughter down, and she came over to me, and I picked her back up. It was so strange. My daughter had never acted like that. The following week, I was waiting for my wife to come back home from the Asian store to watch our kids so I could go hunting. When she got back, she knew I was going hunting because I already had my gear and everything ready. She put the groceries and the food away and came over to me, handing me a tiny black bag. "Here," she said. "Take this. Since you like to drive up in the mountains, hang this in your car to keep you safe." I grabbed the tiny black bag, grabbed my stuff, and told my wife that I was going hunting and would be back by sunset. That day I planned to go alone because I didn't get my deer the week before. I got in my white Tacoma truck and put my stuff in the back seat. As I sat in the driver's seat and turned on my truck, I took the little item out of the tiny black bag my wife gave me to hang inside my truck. It was a little black statue thing. I hung the statue on my rearview mirror and backed out of the garage. As I drove to the first stop sign in our neighborhood, I looked at the statue and started contemplating whether or not I should go hunting. I kept looking at the swinging statue and didn't notice the car behind me until it honked. I made a U-turn and drove back home. Something was telling me I shouldn't go hunting that day, or even that year. When I got home and told my wife that I changed my mind and didn't want to go hunting that day, she was surprised. Hunting is something that I love doing so much and couldn't wait to do on my day off. She asked me why, so I told her about the last time I saw a white Tacoma with the exact same statue inside. The truck was all damaged. I told her that it was just too strange, and maybe I shouldn't go hunting. My wife said that even my father had been having bad dreams lately, and our 2-year-old daughter was scared to look at me. She recommended we consult a shaman. I agreed. We went to see a shaman, and he told my wife and me that after looking into it, he believed I shouldn't be driving that white pickup truck. If someone else drove it, it's okay, but if I kept driving it, I would eventually get into an accident and die. My wife and I believed the shaman, so we sold my white pickup truck to one of my hunting buddies. After that, we performed a shaman ritual for me and my family. I was advised not to go into the mountains that year. I don't know if I was just over-exaggerating. I always wonder if anything would have happened to me if I had gone hunting that day. Did the white truck I saw even exist? Was that white truck me? I don't know. I will never know. To know is to die, so I don't want to know. I wonder if I was in a different dimension for a short time when I climbed that staircase in the forest. I wonder if that staircase is still there. I haven't hunted in that place for a long time. Plus, I forgot where the staircase was anyway. So what do you guys think? Was it a wise choice not to go hunting that day? Or was I just over-exaggerating? Thank you all for spending your time listening to my story. That's all for this video. Thank you for making all the way through and supporting my stories. Have a wonderful day or night.